let's bring him in right now as it is Albert, and you're able to follow him on Twitter at AnalyticsCapper. And Albert, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going, Greg? Yeah, I was looking at some of the features, especially the division winners there, Greg. The Jackson Jaguars, awesome win against the Dallas Cowboys today. Pick six in overtime to kind of walk off the win there. And they are getting plus 125 to win the AFC South. They're a team trending in the right direction, Greg, whereas the Tennessee Titans, who are one game ahead, I believe have lost four straight games now. They have a much tougher schedule. So I like the value there in Jacksonville. They do play in the final week, week 18, I believe. So the winner of that final game is most likely going to win the division there. And I like Jacksonville at home. They're most likely going to be favorites. So if you don't want to play that number, you could play the plus 125 right now for the division odds.
And just in terms of these divisional futures, how much do you take a look at the matchups that they've got this week as well? Because now we're down to it, and you're really able to gauge a lot of these. When you're taking a look before the season, it's like, oh, this should be an easy win. And then come week 10, well, that's not going to be an easy win at all. The Seattle Seahawks are actually playing some decent football. You're able to go down the list of disappointing teams to the positive and the negative. I'm sure that just taking a look prior to the season, if you had the Rams late in your schedule, you're thinking, oh, that's going to be a difficult game, when in reality, it's not so much. But how much do you weigh that in? Because I do take a look at the just slates that these two teams have, and the fact that it's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguars team that's going to be going up against the Jets. And with the Jets dealing with those quarterback issues, I think that lends a little bit of value as well.
Exactly. I put a lot of weight into the feature games, especially with only 3 weeks left, Greg. And the hard game, if you want to call it hard, but Jacksonville beat Dallas. They were 10-3 heading to that game, and Jacksonville they were able to get the upset at home. So they have the Jets. They have a Texans game on the January 1st, and then that aforementioned Titans Jaguars, most likely for division on January 8th. That game is going to be played in Jacksonville. So I think they have two really easy games, and that third game most likely is going to be the decider. Whereas the Tennessee Titans, they still have to play the Cowboys in 2 weeks, and the Cowboys coming off a loss today, and they're gonna face a really really good Philadelphia team this upcoming week. You know that they can't drop a game against the Tennessee Titans in a couple weeks. So I mean, to be quite frank with you, I think the easier schedule is Jacksonville, and the potential game winner or the game decider, Week 18, is going to be at home in Jacksonville. So I like the odds a lot. Plus 125 right now is great value for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yep, I do think that is something that is just so important to take a look at. And I think that it's really important to take a look moving forward at this Bengals team as well, because it felt like it was that game that I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. There are some of those games where it's like, it's just too easy. How are the Bengals only laying between 3 and 3.5, depending upon where and when you are getting the line against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And whenever you don't play those games and they come through, you feel like a complete moron. When you do play those games and they don't come through, same thing as well. But this is one where I do think that the Bengals have looked relatively impressive. And for the Buccaneers, just on a game-to-game standpoint, they are a bunch that I don't really stick a lot of stock into. And yet they're probably going to be hosting a playoff game when it's all said and done, with the Panthers losing this week too.
Yeah, this game was crazy. I mean, I'll be fully transparent. I was on Tampa Bay today. I thought it was great value. And Greg, it looked like a great bet for half of the game, right? The first half, Tampa Bay was up 17 to
Tampa Bay had
3.
more first downs than the Bengals had plays run in that first half.
And then you fast forward to that third quarter, Greg, every single play was run on the Tampa Bay side of the field. That means not only were the Bengals dominating on offense, but Tampa Bay was getting 0 yards, nothing done on their side of the ball as well. So they had 5 straight possessions that ended in turnovers. And it was just an ugly, ugly game. It was the first time, I believe, in Tom Brady's career where he was the sole reason for 4 turnovers. It's one of those games where I thought I was on the right side, but the second half was again very ugly for Tampa Bay. But you're right; they're gonna most likely win the NFC South. Every division winner is gonna be a host for a playoff game. It's most likely gonna be the fifth seed, which is the Dallas Cowboys. and they already beat the Cowboys week 1 today, or this season. They beat them last season as well. So I don't think Tampa Bay is worried about the Cowboys going into their house on Wild Card weekend.
Yep, and what I think is just so interesting about this week in general is all the crazy results that we did see. I mean, we just referenced this. I was on the wrong side of that Patriots versus Raiders game. That was not fun, to say
That's
the
tough.
least. I'm sure that there are many people that might have been holding, I don't know, a Colts money line ticket, and they have to explain to little Johnny at Christmas about how the Colts and Jeff Saturday sold Christmas, and well, that's not too fun. I'm sure that Santa's going to be trying his best in those households, but man, that's not great. And just what advice would you give to people in terms of a week like this? Because there might have been some people that they came out really, really good with a lot of these late results, and then others in which it just came up snake eyes having the best of it for much of the game. And we saw this a lot in college basketball as well, where if you bet the right side and the right side doesn't get there.
Yeah, Greg, for the Patriots, that's two inexplicable endings in the last few years. If you guys remember the Miami Miracle with Gronkowski on the field a few years ago, and then this year with, for some reason, Jacoby Myers decided to throw it back, even though they were it was a tied ball game. They didn't have to really be that desperate. With that being said, man, you're right. Every game you have to treat mutually exclusive from another game. If you are on the bad side or on a bad beat of a game, don't get too emotional. Don't get too down, because there's going to be many, many other chances to get that bet, get that bet back. On the flip side, not only should you not be too down or too emotional, you should never be too up as well, Greg, especially for someone like you who, at times you may have 40 or 50 or 60 games going on at once, especially with all the college basketball slate. So you should never get too high emotionally as well. So the key to being a great handicapper is to make sure you're even keel and to make sure you take emotions out of it.
Absolutely. And going into that game a little bit more specifically in terms of the Patriots and the Raiders, what do you make out of these two teams? Because I still take a look at this Patriots team, and first half was a little bit, shall we say, less than savory. The second half, it was looking relatively solid. And for the Raiders, when I've watched them actually play, they haven't been too bad. It just feels like they've been on the wrong side of so much luck, and this is one where they were on the ultimate good side of luck today.
Yeah, these two teams are really hard to figure out, Greg. I'll say this: the better that Mac Jones plays, the worse the results become. And I'm talking about just wins and losses, because he had a slow start to the season. A lot of it could have been injury related or not getting enough reps. If you guys remember, there was the Bailey Zappi a few weeks there where he came in and kind of lit the team on fire. But they knew that Mac Jones was going to be their number one quarterback, or their QB1 moving forward. It took him a few weeks. He finally had a solid game against Minnesota about a month ago. He lost that game. And then he hasn't really won any of these big games, especially today against the Raiders. If you look at the Raiders, we all know they're super talented, weapons on the outside, potentially, the best wide receiver in the game with Devontae Adams that joined the team. But the issue with this team has always been defense, and they're very, very loose with the football. And you saw that again today, a lot of turnovers, including a Derek Carr pick six. So it's an issue with them. They just need to be able to take care of the ball better and make better coaching decisions from the top.
Absolutely. And one great decision that we made on this show is getting you aboard, Albert. And coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at Monday Night Football with the analytics capper himself, Albert, on the flip side here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It is the Greg Peterson Experience right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, being rejoined by Albert Nguyen. You know him better as the analytics capper. And Albert, well, this might not have been the Monday Night Football game that we were hoping for, but it's the game that we've got coming into the season. If you would have told me that we've got a mid-December game between the Packers and the Rams, I would have been really excited. Both of these teams, well, they pretty much pooped in our stocking. So not so great there. But with that said, with the Packers, they are a 7-point favorite. Total on this game is pretty much 39.5 across the board. What is your read on this game? Because I take a look at it, and being someone from the great state of Wisconsin, it's typically not warm out there in the Midwest. I took a look at the phone app for my home state, and well, it looks like it's probably going to be right around 15 or so degrees at first kick, and looks like a game in which it's not going to have very good elements.
Yeah, Greg. So it's gonna Kickoff is going to start somewhere in the teens. It's going to get colder as the night goes on. The one advantage here is Baker Mayfield, starter for the excuse me, starter for the LA Rams. He's used to playing in the cold, right? Being in Cleveland for a few years there. With that being said, though, the frozen tundra is a different animal. The Green Bay Packers still have a lot to play for, Greg. 7-point favorites. I think I'm going to lay those points. I think Green Bay is going to come out and really dominate this game, especially on the defensive side. I don't think Baker and the rest of his team will be able to move the ball. Last week was incredible, right? They had an amazing comeback against the Raiders. The very last play, for some reason, the Raiders played press coverage, and Baker Mayfield was able to take advantage of that. Remember, though, that was only day 3 on the job. You fast forward to tomorrow, it's really only day 11 on the job. It's not like he's a big veteran. It's not like the playbook is going to expand too much tomorrow. And honestly, with Green Bay Packers, who are still mathematically in the race for the final wildcard spot in the NFC, I think they're going to be more motivated tomorrow. And to be honest, if you look at the injury report, Greg, they are relatively healthy. Outside of Bakhtiari, I think everyone else is most likely coming back and playing tomorrow. And I think they are still very motivated to get the job done. So I like the Green Bay Packers -7 at home tomorrow.
And then do you have any take in terms of the total? Because this is a game where I'm going to be attacking a lot of unders. I'm seeing Baker Mayfield at 188 passing yards. I like that under. I'm seeing Aaron Rodgers at 1.5 touchdown passes. I like that under. I think that this is going to be a game because it is going to be very cold. The ball is going to be like a big giant brick. I do think that that is going to be able to help things out in terms of a little bit more, if you like, overs, perhaps with the running backs in this game. And I think that for the Pastors, it's going to be a little bit of a rough night.
Yeah, I like that look a lot, Greg. With the temperatures being very, very cold, the one thing though, it's not too windy tomorrow. But with that being said, with it being so cold, I think they are going to lean on the run heavily. And we know the Green Bay Packers have a very, very good running game. When they have success running the ball, they've been pretty solid all year long. So you're right. In terms of the betting perspective, I do like the full game under if I had to pick a side. But definitely on the props, look at maybe total pass attempts under, yardage unders, and then looking at rushing attempts or carries over, things like that. I don't know if I would do the yards over on the ground, to be honest, because I think it's just going to be really tough to move the ball because of the temperature. So I like the attempts more than actual yardage when it comes to player props.
Yep, I think that that's something really good to take a look at. Really, the only guy I would consider an over on is Aaron Jones. He's got 60.5 rushing yards. I think that he should be able to get there against a Rams team that's a little bit banged up, and we've seen the Packers, when they've had their most success, actually do it on the ground. And got to think if the Packers have a lead, they are going to be very much utilizing Aaron Jones, keeping it on the ground, keeping Aaron Rodgers out of harm's way. So I do think that that is going to be very important for them. And this is going to be a game of the utmost importance. If the Dallas Cowboys want any hope of being able to win the division, because they, much like the Packers, they've got a shot at the division, but they need to pretty much win out, and they need the Eagles to lose out, so they're mathematically alive, just like the Packers are barely mathematically alive in terms of being able to make the playoffs. But big game between the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles going into Sunday, with Cowboys between a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite, depending upon where you shop. How do you take a look at this game? Because I've done nothing with this one. I need a little bit more time to be able to take a look at it, but no doubt, big-time divisional rivalry, big-time revenge spot in this game, and for the Dallas Cowboys can really be a little bit of a rubber stamp for them after they had a, let's call it what it is, disappointing loss against the Jaguars.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing loss on the road in overtime. They had fully controlled that game. I think they were up 27-10 midway in the third quarter before Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville offense really took over that game there. This is a big moment for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. They've had a solid year. They had a lot of ups and downs. Dak was even out for a few games, had Cooper Rush in to replace him, and he was able to lead them to wins. And that was the last time these two teams met. Cooper Rush was in, and he did a formidable job, but he, as we all know, is not as talented as Dak, and that playbook is very, very small when it comes to Cooper Rush. So The Cowboys have a full roster next weekend. They're going to be at home. This is a big revenge spot. The -1, -1.5 makes you feel like it's a Philadelphia play, to be honest, Greg, because I don't like those short spreads, especially at home. If you bet those type of angles and type of games long term, you're gonna lose. So I don't like that type of number. But the spot here is 100% Dallas, coming off a bad loss, coming off a head-to-head loss, coming back home to play in the AT&T Stadium. Right now, I don't have an official play, but I most likely would lean Dallas there. And statistically speaking, Greg, these teams are carbon copies of each other. Both teams average around 28, 29 points on offense and only give up about 19 points on defense. So both of these teams have one of the best point differential ratings in the National Football League. And I think they're going to be able to have a really good game next week. It's going to come down to turnovers. Dak's been very loosey-goosey with the ball recently. Jalen Hurts threw 2 interceptions in his first 14 attempts against the Chicago Bears today. So it's going to come down to turnovers. Whoever takes care of it and whoever is going to have the ball last might be the winner in that game.
Yep, I think that is something that is very important to take a look at. And Albert, just in terms of the NFL landscape right now, for some of these teams, they might have just 3 games left in their season, but is there maybe a team that is on the outside looking in for the playoffs? They might not be going to the playoffs that still have some value in what you've been seeing. They've been fighting relatively hard and covering a few spreads for you.
Yeah, I like the Miami Dolphins, man. That was on Saturday. It was a great opportunity for them
In the
to make
cold.
some noise. They potentially should have won that game, to be honest. They went on the road. I think it was the coldest game that Tua Tagovailoa has ever started in his life. That includes high school and college football. The only game where it was under 36 degrees, and he played pretty well. That ending there, in my opinion, was pretty coin flippy in Buffalo's favor. But I think a team with the offense like a Miami Dolphins is really always going to have a chance. And then on the NFC side, I think the Green Bay Packers, I know a lot of people have not really thought about this team as a playoff team, but if dominoes fall their way, if they win out and somehow sneak into the tournament, it's still Aaron Rodgers at the end of the day. He's still one of the best to ever do it. And if you're going to have to play and beat a team that's led by Aaron Rodgers, I mean, it's always tough to scheme against that. So, I mean, I would say it's the Miami Dolphins that I would be scared of on the AFC, and then on the NFC, it would be the Green Bay Packers.
Yep, with the Green Bay Packers, they still have that man by the name of Aaron Rodgers, and as long as they are mathematically alive, which that might be coming to an end sooner rather than later, as long as they're mathematically alive, you know exactly what you're going to be getting there, and we always know exactly what we're going to get out of you, Albert. That's just absolutely tremendous insights. You do an absolutely amazing job taking a look at so many things, as I know you've been doing some great work in terms of college football, NFL, NBA. You're just able to go down the line. Always do appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
I appreciate it so much, Greg. Thank you for having me on. And if we don't speak, have a great Christmas over the weekend. Enjoy football, enjoy college basketball this week.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.